but Antarctica, and to all but 2 of the lower 48 contiguous states. So had to do the math there for a moment. So like to know what else is going on. So, or if you have anything else you want to talk about, feel free to.
Oh,
Miles, welcome. Robert, do you have anything you want to share with us about a bucket list?
It's my new me.
Sherry, do you want to check the slides? There we go. Thank you. We are going to wait a few more minutes. It's not quite 2 o'clock, and we are typically, Zoom has created us as individuals who show up promptly at 2 o'clock. We don't have to travel anymore. So we have a lot of people that arrive just at 2 o'clock. So we will wait for them. Gary, welcome. Tricia, I see that you've joined us. So thank you for joining us today. Our onboarding question is, what is something that you have crossed off of your bucket list? So I would love to hear something that maybe you have crossed off in recent days, weeks, months, or years.
We're a really quiet group today, Lori.
They are, yes. I know it's graduation week and a lot of things going on, so.
State track.
Yes. Okay, Jamie, it can be a personal bucket list or a work bucket list. We have no qualifiers on the question, so feel free to share.
Or I'll get to watch 2 of my grandkids at the state meet here tomorrow and Saturday competing, so that'd be a good thing to cross off the bucket list.
Super. What events?
Both brother and sister are running the 3200 tomorrow, and then the sister is running the 800 and the 16 on Saturday.
Okay. I admire them already, so.
It's a lot of running.
It is.
Yeah.
So, Jamie, would you mind giving me a little bit more information? I don't even know how to pronounce your bucket list item. I would love to hear more about it, though.
I went to Machu Picchu 2 years. No, it's been 3 years ago now, I think. That's been on my bucket list since I was in middle school, and I wrote a report on it, and it was beautiful. I'd highly recommend it.
Okay.
In the mountains of Peru.
Okay, I was just going to say, could you help me with geography? Very cool. So that is, I'll have to look that one up. I've not heard of that location before. So
You and I need to cuddle. The middle of the screen looks empty. Mary, Mary, Mary.
For those of you who've joined us, if nothing else, it will be an entertaining session today with Derek and Chris.
Well, I just saw Carly Bruning joined us. And are you at home, Carly, or are you at work? Do we get to see babies?
I'm at work.
Oh,
Sorry.
darn.
I know. Sorry.
I love the pictures on Facebook.
Thank you. They're quite a handful, but they're fun. So
I was just going to say, for the person watching grandkids or children at state track meet, I can never understand why you would do all that running just to run a race and then start all over again. So I definitely appreciate anybody who can run. So we are almost at 2 o'clock. We're just going to give a couple more minutes for individuals to join us. I know we have quite a few that will regularly participate that I haven't seen join us yet. So we'll give them just a little bit more time. So, Sherry, do you have a bucket list item?
You know, I recently became a grandma. It wasn't my bucket list, but evidently my daughters put it on there or something. So that's been kind of cool.
Okay,
Great.
great.
I don't really have a bucket list, except for I like to say that whenever I grow up, I want to be retired.
Okay. I haven't decided what I want to be yet when I grow up. So that's something interesting. So thank you for sharing that. So, well, why don't we go ahead and pull up the next slide, because I do want to honor everyone's time and be respectful of your time, not only our speakers, but everyone else. So I just want to welcome all of you today to HomeNE. And I am Lori Ferguson. I'm with South Central Economic Development District here in Holdridge. Thank you for joining us. And I just want to say a very sincere thank you to all of you, because HomeNE continues to grow because of you and your presence and your participation. It continues to expand across the state of Nebraska, and many of you have been faithful in making this learning network what it is today. This is our 4th year. I would say we're 3.5 years into this now, and not ever sure what it was going to be, but it continues to grow and amaze us, and we thank you for that. I also want to give kudos to the Nebraska Department of Economic Development for their financial support of HomeNE. They are our financial partners, and for those of you from the department that are on with us today, a thank you to all of you as well. So whether this is your first or one of many HomeNE webinars and that you have participated in, we just greatly appreciate you. So today we have the pleasure of hearing from representatives from the city of Superior, Nebraska. Chris Peterson is the mayor of Superior, and he is assisted today and supported by Derek Clark, who is the city planner for the city of Superior. And you are in for a real treat as they tell the story of Superior. I've wanted them on for a very long time, and today we are hearing their story, and it's very interesting. Before we formally introduce our speakers to you, I just want to encourage you to be thinking of questions for Chris and Derek as you listen to them. Use your chat box to post your thoughts or write down your questions, and we'll be asking those of Chris and Derek a little bit later on. So before we begin, just tell us via the chat box, why did you join us today? What is of interest to you about their topic? And what do you hope to know at the end of today's webinar? So add your responses to the chat box. But as we wrap up a little bit later today, I encourage you also to use your microphones and ask your questions of our speakers. There's nothing like engagement. And if COVID taught us one thing, we still want to be connected to each other. So HomeNE is a learning network, and we learn best when we interact and engage with each other. So normally at this time, I would be turning this over to Sharon Heffley, the Executive Director here at South Central Economic Development District. Sharon is with us, but she has been out and about in the district today at meetings and was unsure if she could actively participate. So I am joined by Sherry Albert. You've seen Sherry many times. She does our Zoom logistics for our webinars, and she is also our fiscal officer here at South Central. So Sherry, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Lori. Good afternoon and welcome to the May edition of the HomeNE 2021 webinar series. As most of you know, South Central Economic Development District serves as the lead agent for the Learning Network, and we're glad that you're here. HomeNE this is dual duty now. I have to think about my slides. Sorry about that. HomeNE is designed for people across Nebraska seeking to successfully address our local housing challenges. And HomeNE's purpose is to build a network of individuals and communities with a shared interest in assessing and addressing housing issues in rural communities. We provide a safe space to be discussed what's been going on and finding out what's motivation to take one more step in the right direction. We want to learn from the successes and struggles of others. We want to take away new ideas and see things through a new lens. And most importantly, we want to inspire you. We want you in turn to help you inspire your tribe or your community. And because of that, then your community gets the value from these, and no one can do or will do it quite like you do. And now is the time to leave your mark on your community. At this time, I want to introduce you to Chris Peterson. Chris is the mayor of the city of Superior. Chris serves as the mayor of Superior. He has been involved in city government since 2012. Prior to becoming mayor in May of 2020, he served as the city council president for 3 years. He's also an active public servant as he served the community as a volunteer firefighter and EMT with over 10 years of service in each, as well as serving in various leadership capacities. Chris is a proud veteran of the U.S. Army, where he served over 8 years. He was born and raised in Superior, and he and his wife of 30 plus years look forward to entertaining their grandchildren there as they grow. Chris, thank you for your service to our country and joining us today on the HomeNE Learning Network. And we're going to let you introduce Derek.
Great. Thank you. Happy to be here. Thanks everyone for joining us. With me today is Derek Clark, city planner. Known Derek for quite a while now. He was instrumental in everything that we're going to talk about today. Been with us since the beginning of all of this. And if you could have a right-hand man to help you through a lot of this stuff, I recommend finding somebody just like him. But you can't have him. He's mine. So keep that in mind. So next slide, please. So to do anything, any project worthwhile, the very first thing you have to do is take that first step. And for us, that first step was sitting through a meeting and deciding that we needed to clean up Superior. And that was actually before I got on city council, but the decision was made and I was in the process of moving up here. And when I got up here, there was turmoil. And by turmoil, you can see by the next bullet there, the mayor and 3 council members were in the process of being recalled. At the time, I was actually running to be on city council. You need to be brave enough to take that first step anyway, because there's going to be turmoil in any project that is worthwhile. We needed to take some time to clean up houses and other areas of town that were detrimental, I guess, to the health and welfare of the community. They were definitely not pleasant to look at, and at certain times they were actually condemned and we needed to demolish them. Change never comes easy. The citizenry, of course, didn't take kindly to this, thus the recall attempt. And that's what I stepped into as a first-term council member. The recall attempts failed because, as the second bullet states, the leadership has to be in agreement and they have to present the united front. The reason behind that is if you're not in agreement from the top down, you end up going in too many different directions. And all the Dereks in the world aren't going to be able to help you, because you have to be able to give your teams underneath you direction, and they have to be able to focus what you need to do in order to get grants going and do surveys and organize all these events that have to happen to support your long-term goals. The leadership has to act in concert and you have to stand united. It just has to be that way. The second somebody steps out of line or doesn't tote the company line, as it were, you start showing some fractures and things start falling apart. So you have to stick together and you have to stand together. That's the only way you're going to get this done. You have to start with that first step, and you have to be brave to do it, because change doesn't come naturally to people. Human nature, it just is the way it is. Once you get past that, then you got to go through the process of public meetings. You have to go through the process of grant applications, surveys, waiting for the results, and all this takes time. Good change always does take time, and nothing happens overnight. We've been going through this for a decade, essentially. We started this process back in 2012. Here we are in 2021, finally starting to reap some of the benefits and show a lot of improvement. We started with that first step, and now later on, Derek will tell you a little bit about our boom project that we just got off the ground this past year that will show you where we've replaced some of the housing, or started to replace some of the housing that we demolished. The other key part of this, you have to stay the course. You've got to stay strong, and you've got to develop a plan along the way, and you've got to stick with that plan. Without a good plan in place, because we went through grants that also developed a master plan for the city. You have to follow that. Then that allowed us to do more surveys. That allowed us to apply for more grants, to do some more work. That allows us to do even more, and it builds on itself. With each little step, you build a little bit more momentum, and eventually the town gets behind you. The citizens get behind you because they start to see the positive change. So being brave enough to take that first step is key, because without that, none of the rest of it happens. You have to do that in order to take the second step. You're going to make mistakes along the way because, well, we're human, but you have to do all of that work, and you have to be prepared to do some work and get dirty along the way. Get down in there and get in the trenches with your citizens to make progress work. So coming up, you're going to see a lot of the grants that we've done over the years, and all that was started by taking one step that was ugly at first, but perseverance allowed us to make a lot of progress, and in the process spend a lot of money. Unfortunately, spend a lot of money, but the progress was well worth it. So next slide, please. Sure, there we go. So Derek, if you want to kind of tap in here.
Yes. So first off, Lori said, welcome to all DED. We love you too. Keep giving us money. Thank you.
Yes.
And we'll keep applying. As you can see from the slide there, we have tried and been extremely successful leveraging our local funds. And I will piggyback off what Chris was saying with our nuisance abatement program. When I got here in 10, we have always demolished houses. We've always kind of had an active housing authority in the late 1990s, but there was really no systematic approach to it. And as a planner, it was who complained, whose house is falling down, and then we would pick 2 or 3 and tear them down. So when I got here, it was, well, how do we approach that in a systematic way and go from there? We were lucky enough that Jan, our city clerk, went to a clerk school meeting where they talked about this nuisance abatement program that started out in western Nebraska, and pitched it to the council. The mayor at that time, she was on board with it, approached SCED and asked, hey, can we be the test subject? Because we like being guinea pigs. Let's see where it goes. Lucky enough, SCED took it on, and that really was the catalyst to propelling us into a lot of the stuff that you're going to see on the screen there. We've said it over and over and over again. If you don't take pride in your own community, if you don't invest in your own community, if you're relying on outside dollars, if you're relying on big companies to come in and save you with jobs, it's just never going to happen, especially in rural Nebraska and rural America. So we took that first step to say, we're going to reverse what's been going on. The council stuck their neck out, like he said, And we broke the town up into sections, and we systematically assessed, SCED did, each property based on a set of criteria. And it wasn't beautification, it was health and safety. So it wasn't your house needs painted, it's you have 37 bags of garbage in your backyard, and that's not a great health thing. So
Exactly.
we moved forward with that, and really it kicked off what you see on the screen there. From 2011 till now, we have leveraged about 3.4 million. Of that, 1.3 is local funds. So we're at about a 60 to 40 ratio, which is great for us. And really, once again, that all started with that first step. And some of the big ones, if you'll see in red, those are the ones that we have going currently. And if you just total those up, we're just under $1 million in outside funds coming into the city this year and last year. So from our standpoint, being able to leverage funds and do more with it, it's been amazing, and it's really allowed us to move forward. So once again, taking the first step has really brought that into the forefront. So now if you'd go to the next slide, please, Sherry. Those steps forward. So that first step was that nuisance on the left. And what that did was allowed us to finish up our comp plan in 2014. And then we did a second community needs assessment survey to really figure out where our community was, what they wanted, and how do we go about doing that. And I'll kind of pick on Lori here because she just said, why would someone want to run an entire race just to end up where they were and start over again? That's truly what you do in this process. The community needs assessment survey. We've done it religiously every 5 years. Yep. And it truly, although you have things moving forward, you don't know what else you need to do until the community tells you. And so those are a huge jumping off point for us. It gives us the public input. It gives us kind of the background information to go after the things that the council would like to see done. So that NAP led into those. And what that did was bring out several things that our community wanted. It was housing. I'm sure everyone's heard that. It was solid waste. How do we get rid of our things? It was economic development. Why don't big companies want to come in? And really the final one is that recreational or quality of life stuff. And so we took that and we did a lot of preliminary studies. We did a housing study. We did a solid waste study. And we kept moving forward. And the interesting thing about the nuisance abatement program was it had a lot of unintended consequences. Yes, we were getting rid of blight, and we were getting rid of deteriorated structures, and we were fixing health and safety stuff. But we all of a sudden brought up the fact that we don't have an easy solution for solid waste. Right now, our closest municipal landfill is an hour away. So our local trash haulers run their routes once or twice a week. Then they take their trucks to an hour away, they unload it. So when we were going through this cleanup, people were like, well, I can't get rid of this stuff. What do you want me to do? That's why I store it until I can take it somewhere. So we did a solid waste study to try to see how do we handle that. Another unintended consequence was a bunch of vacant lots. So lots that had $10,000 to $12,000 demolition liens on them that the city was still mowing and maintaining and accruing more liens on, but you were never going to do anything with them. You were going to have to wait that 7 years for the sheriff's sale on the tax, and then either purchase it to do something with it or watch it go to someone else that hopefully maintained it. So those were two big consequences that we had to figure out, how do we move forward? And that middle line there is kind of how we moved forward with our housing projects. And obviously HomeNE is really focused on housing. So that's kind of the one I'm going to highlight. But knowing in our mind here in Superior, housing is more than just a structure. It's the connectivity to the rest of the community, whether that's walkability. It's the connectivity to the schools and your major trip generators. And how do you make a sense of place with the people that live in your community so they have pride and will continue to support moving forward and providing the things. So that middle line is what I'll talk about now, kind of our steps forward on the housing side. Next slide, please. So as I stated, we did a survey and we finished up our comp plan. And what it really showed us is we had several residents that needed to do a lot of updates to their homes, but they did not have the ability nor the finances to do it. The other thing that really came out, it was our construction costs versus sale price. Our comp plan really highlighted that median income in Superior at that time was like $29,000. Our median house valuation was $53,000. So there was not going to be any new spec homes or construction homes when your median house is at 53. The valuation just isn't there to build it. So how did we go about doing that? Well, we applied for a NIFA grant and was lucky enough to get it. And this sounds repetitive, but we did a study. And we conducted a housing study, and it really showed us that our niche market is that 50 to 150 range. Now, obviously that's 6 years ago, so there's some inflation that needs to happen there. And how do we go about hitting those marks? Because our contractors right now are so busy, and they're building, $150,000 to $200,000 homes. Those are custom homes. They're not speculative. They don't need to take the risk. So how do we go about doing that? Well, the first step was to take that information, and we applied for a OOR grant. And the beauty of this one was, as we were going through and the nuisance abatement program is running simultaneously with all of these. And one of the things that we were figuring out was, because we have a solid waste problem, to get a demo contractor into town, the mobilization fees and the disposal fees were really elevating a lot of our costs. So we thought, what if we move ahead, knowing the segments of town that are coming up? We know the vacant structures that are substandard, that no one's living in. What if we as a city jump ahead, pick all those out, demolish them at once, and then we kind of cost save when on mobilization? Well, the council and SCED had the foresight to say, well, take that $50,000 that you're going to spend on demolition anyway, leverage another $250,000 through the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which allows demolition. And we took our $50,000 we were going to spend for demolition, turned that to $79,500 for demolition, and also was able to put $175,000 into our current housing stock. So we took our housing stock and elevated some of those, and we removed some blight. So it was really a win-win for us. We ended up demolishing 12 homes with it. And then like I said, we beat our target, and we were actually able to do 8 residential rehabs. So it was an extremely successful project. So as we're going through all these steps, as I stated, the NAP's running along with this. And we finished last year. And if you'll look at that number, $560,000 between admin fees, between our dumpsters, between the demolition costs, we have spent. We've got a lot of local invested into that. So once again, we invested in ourselves, we moved forward, and then it showed that everyone else, DED, anyone else that wants to come in Superior, you should feel comfortable investing in us, because we will take that risk investing in ourselves. So once we finished all of that, up came Project Boom. Next slide, please. So Project Boom, we came up with a catchy acronym. It stands for Building Owner Occupied Momentum. We have a lot of rentals. We don't have a lot of quality, middle of the range owner occupied homes. So we went and applied for the trust fund on a innovation grant, and we went and we presented to them. And the purpose of Project Boom, as I stated, was contractors were not going to build homes in these price range. And they wanted to make, the big profit margin on the one house they build. And what we set out to do was say, hey, you can build houses in these price range. And if you do 2 or 3 at once and you make a little profit on each one of them, it fills 2 needs. You make your big profit overall, and we provide these houses for the people that we need. We really wanted to do infill. It would cut down our infrastructure costs. It, once again, promotes that connectivity, that walkability. And then finally, we really wanted to show it would work and spur development. And then because we were working with SCED on it, to actually, kind of like now in this HomeNE, to kind of show that, hey, it can work, hopefully. We're in the middle of it now, but that was the goal. So next slide. So our project was to build 6 new units, and we were going to do a ranch, kind of a 3-bedroom, 1-car garage, 4 cottages, which were in the 800 to 900 square foot range, and then a shipping container. You've seen them, but it was an innovation grant. We kind of had a foundation here that was big into shipping containers at the time. So we pitched that idea. And then after those are built and sold, our biggest thing we wanted to do was create a revolving loan fund so we can continue to invest in the community with this pot of money that we had. Now, I would ignore that total housing cost because COVID has blown that out of the water, and we'll see where we end up there, but hopefully not too far over our target. So next slide, please. So I'll kind of run through what Project Boom was. We picked out 6 sites in town where we had demolished homes through our nuisance abatement program. And at that time, as I stated, that unintended consequence was we had vacant properties that we could not do anything with, but we still had to maintain. So we partnered with our local economic development group, and they purchased some of these lots that were ripe for infill. So they would purchase a lot, they would deed it to the city or our CDA. We would come in, handle the demolition, clear the site, and then we would get it ready for this redevelopment. So those are our 6 sites around town. We had kind of picked sites along major routes. One is the first one that I'll talk about here. It goes to our school. The other ones are on our highways or close to our downtown. So the first two that we started on are on our route to our schools. Next slide, please. So along our school is probably a 1/4 mile to the left of this picture. Along that route, the X's and the boxes are homes that we demolished and then ended up owning. So we had 6 homes there. All were vacant. All were extremely substandard. Animals were living in them. Some of them were when we did the asbestos removal on them, they kept the hazmat suits on to clean some of it up just to be able to go in them. And it was rough. People, if you look back at our community needs assessment surveys, one of the major comments is, look at the route to school. It is horrendous. People drive it all the time. So what can you do about it? So we purchased and demolished these 6 homes. Next slide, please. And those ones that were on the right in the boxes, we tore down with the intent to redevelop them. So kind of our local investment, once again, investing, we removed those 3 units and for about $27,000 in demolition, because like I said, homes are more than just the structure. We built all the sidewalk back in. We wanted those sidewalks to be nice again, to promote connectivity, to promote walkability, grading, and then property acquisition. So we had about $45,000 into this area. Next slide. And our intent was to take those 3 homes, split them into 2, and to build 2 units that we were hoping to sell for in that $80,000 range. And we were going to build 2 cottages. One is called a salt box just based on the design, but each of them would have 2 bedrooms, at least 1.5 baths, and then a carport. So those are the sites on the right. After we removed the homes, we had 2 vacant lots that were ready for redevelopment. Next slide. So this would be the salt box concept, just to kind of give you an idea of the layout. They're not huge. This one is about 950, 960. 2 bedrooms with a loft. Pretty simple, but big enough and able to hit that market.
Good starter home.
Yes. Next slide, please. This is the cottage. It is a single level, 2 bedroom, 1.5 bath. Really kind of meant once again as a starter home or a retiree. We tried to make them fit multiple purposes based on where they were in our community. So these could be small families. When we build the ones downtown, they could be more towards our senior population because it's by the grocery store and connected close to the pharmacy, and those other trip generators that they're going to be using. Next slide, please. So once again, to kind of give you an idea, we started these about 6 months ago. To remind you, this is the house that was all the way to the right. And if you go to the next slide, this is what we have there now. During construction would be to the left, to the right is where we sit today. We went ahead and through our housing authority, we kept it middle of the road. And as I said, we inflated some of our costs, but we really had to keep it middle of the road, and we kind of used some higher end products on the outside. That way, obviously Nebraska, hail, different weather, that they wouldn't be having issues once we sold them. Next slide. So then the next two houses that were to the left of this one, we removed both of those just to remind you of what was there. And then on the next slide, we put up that cottage. So this is more of a traditional looking cottage. It's that 2-bedroom, kind of single level carport. And they abut kind of a grassy, a big wooded area. So those were the two that we're doing now. We will finish the next 4 shortly. And what we've come to find out is based on COVID, our materials costs have skyrocketed. But by building 2 together, we are way ahead on our hours. So our labor hours are great for us right now. And how we're doing these is the city is the developer. We carry all of the materials costs. We kind of handle all of our subs. We just pay our general contractor labor. So it's worked out really well. The interesting thing is they look great architecturally. They're going to be great homes. There's just interesting ways that we can change them to make them a little more affordable in the future. But so far, we've got a lot of interest, and we're pretty excited once they get done. Drywall is supposed to happen next week, and then we'll try to get them on the market. And we're digging footings for our next 2, hopefully next week as well, if it stops raining. But that's where we are. I think our final slide, I think, just hammers home the point.
Yeah, the big thing, and Derek has mentioned this several times throughout this, and that's invest in yourselves. If you don't, nobody else will. Aside from taking that first step, you've got to turn around, and all that grant money that you're trying to go after, you got to be able to invest your own money to back that up. But it's not just money. It's investing your time, your sweat equity, your ideas. Get with your community. It's amazing from when I first got on council and started attending meetings with the community, the ideas that were coming forward, how it's changed from that time through the turmoil of starting the NAT program to where we are today when we have a community meeting. The ideas that are generated is phenomenal. The response that we get through the community needs assessment surveys is phenomenal. Doing that on a regular basis gives you such guidance from a council level and from a city level. Your citizens will tell you where you need to go. You just need to listen to them. And I mean that in more ways than one. But all puns intended as well there. But really do truly invest in yourselves, because nobody else is going to. You have to take that first step and get the process started. But invest in yourselves money-wise and time-wise and sweat equity-wise. Roll up your sleeves, do some of the work yourselves. So it's been a great time over the last decade. It's been interesting. It's been hard. It's been frustrating, but in the long run, it's been very rewarding to see how far we've come and to see where we're going. So it's been a blast. So working beside Derek, we've had a great time working through some of these things, and we still got more to go. So that's our presentation.
Okay, thank you, Derek and Chris. So it's such a phenomenal story, and so I'm excited that you shared it. We do have some questions, and as I begin to share questions with our speakers, feel free to add your questions in the chat box or open up your microphone, because we want to hear from you as well. So the first question that was posed is, how do you suggest people get started and involved with the funding for these projects, including just any ordinary citizen that might want to get involved?
From my perspective,
Mm-hmm.
get a hold of your city council representative or your city board representative, depending on the size of your community, and let them know that you're interested. You know,
Okay.
and from there, urge them to contact whoever their economic development people are and see what's available. I mean, really, that's the direction you need to go, because you have to start somewhere.
Okay, perfect. We have another question. Was there pushback on purchasing the abandoned homes? In this individual's community, they have found people want to keep their property no matter what the condition, and the leadership has a mindset that they can't tell people what to do with their property. What would your thoughts be on that?
I would say we've had mixed results on that. I mean, some properties, literally, people were more than happy to just turn them over to us. But yeah, we've had some other results where, yeah, we've had some pushback, and we've had to, end up with long drawn out discussions where in some cases we ended up not getting the properties, or we've had to go to court. But ultimately, when you sit down and look at it from a health and safety perspective, and you have the same rules applied consistently, you can win that battle, but you have to be persistent.
Okay.
So there's a couple different ways. Locally, you could do it and administer the exact same program that we did. The issue is, and it sounds like we had a very similar community. This is in private property rights or private property rights. Mm-hmm. And the benefit of using a third party to assess was that everyone was equal. It was fair, firm, and consistent. So I got a letter, the mayor got a letter, the city got a letter, because we were doing a bridge project and we hadn't tore the house down yet. And by doing it that way, when it's, well, you're not treating everyone the same, that's completely false. And then after you get through that year one or that year two, and you've actually done some demolitions because you followed that legal process that's been vetted, it's been challenged a couple times. The result of that process is a vacant property in your community that has nothing on it, but obviously that's probably better than a deteriorated health and safety hazard structure
that poses a danger.
Yes. And that property essentially becomes valueless, because who in our community is going to buy a vacant property with a $12,000 lien on it? And as we move forward through the process, individuals that were absentee landlords that did not live in Superior, that saw what the ultimate result that the council would follow through with, thought, well, either I can have a vacant property that has a huge lien on it, or I can get $500 right now and walk away. And luckily enough, the economic development people were savvy enough to be able to purchase those, and it kind of fell into place. But really, following through, and I know Sharon's on here, and she always says, don't tell your kids you're going to rip your arm off and beat them with it, because you're never going to do that. It's one of those things that the council followed through, and once you said success breeds success, and once that snowball went over the hill, a lot of these things, although we look like we planned all this out and it worked really well, some of it was just, it happened that way. Yeah. And it was some of these unintended consequences that allowed us to continue to move forward.
Good, thank you. I just want to follow up, and Sharon, chime in. I think sometimes the view of housing as a community asset instead of a private asset really changes the thinking process of leadership. Sharon, do you have anything you want to share along those lines if you're available? Well, she's maybe joining us for pondering that. I do have some more questions for you. Could you repeat the information where you stated the city was acting as the developer? You mentioned what costs the city had borne and how that relationship worked. Could you just reiterate some of that information?
So we were lucky enough that we have a local architect that provided the designs, and she drew them up. Now we have reached out to some of our local colleges on once we finish Project Boom. As I stated, there's going to be a revolving loan fund. So we've reached out to some of these colleges to see if we couldn't work with them, some of their architectural classes, to design and follow through on one. But what we did was took those designs and then we put out an RFQ for a general contractor. And we had a couple submittals. We selected one, and essentially it was, here's our house. What is your labor costs? And so they went through everything on a typical house build, broke out their labor, their rates, and gave us a quote. We then took that and hired them, and then we purchased everything else. We kept everything local. We have a local lumber yard that we bought all of our materials from, our trusses. And so we pay those material costs. We've paid all of our, plumbing fixtures, our tap fees, our building permits, and all we are truly paying for is our contractor's labor, which we're not paying the markup then on their materials and everything else. And it's truly, although once again, we have blown our budget out of the water, we are still going to be in it in an affordable price. And it has been able to keep our costs down, and we'll be able to sell them. But that's how we're handling it. It's a little more legwork. We've got to look at invoices daily from the things that they're purchasing and making sure. And I know Lori has to go line by line when we send them to her and how we're doing it. But once again, it's worth it to be able to provide those quality houses in those price ranges that we need.
Okay, good. We're having some issues hearing Sharon. She sent a message, but I do have a question from another individual. Has this development that you're working on spurred more development from other entities? What are you seeing there?
Slowly, but yeah, we are starting to see some interest from some developers here over the last 4 months.
Yeah.
And we are starting to see some interest in some development. So yeah, it is starting to work. And that's kind of what I was hinting at with, we see that we're starting to see the rewards a little bit, and we can kind of see where it's going. Our work isn't done. It's never done. There's still a lot more that can be done. But yeah, we are starting to see some interest slowly but surely.
From a economic development standpoint, we've kind of been seeing the rewards of the nuisance, the code enforcement side of it.
Yeah.
So we've, once we started nuisance, we had a large cooperative that tore down a bunch of houses and just wanted to pile grain, downtown all over, and we stopped it. They ended up building a $28 million new facility. Mm-hmm. And we had an old school that was then rehabbed into a long-term care facility. And really a lot of these, and the only reason they bought it, someone tried to buy it, cut holes in it, and store hay bales in it, and we wouldn't have let that happen. And so really just the council taking those hard stance, it really opened up the development side. So for the last probably 7 years, we have seen quite a bit of development for a town of our size. And there's always, pretty soon we're getting ready to open up a new coffee shop. We have change on a local restaurant. We've got a couple other things that are coming that aren't really out yet. So we've seen it from that. But once again, from the housing standpoint, right now we just had a several $100,000 house that's finishing up, getting ready to start another one with a local contractor. We've had a new subdivision with 4 houses built in that time. But the kicker is none of that is where our housing study says we need to be. Those are custom homes that are built for people specifically. So we have, and I'm sure people are seeing this all over the country, all of our local businesses are trying to hire. Yep. Our hospital is trying to hire, and we cannot find homes for anyone. And it's because we're missing that niche. So hopefully once we finish these 2, get them sold, that's where we hope we can spur that redevelopment, those contractors, maybe even some of our local. So we wrote our reuse guidelines that any developer could do it. And we kind of anticipate some of our local businesses to apply to get some of those funds to build houses to be able to fill their employment needs. So I think the housing side of it is coming, but just the code side and the investing in ourselves has paid dividends for several years at this point.
So for those who maybe aren't familiar with Superior, Derek, you alluded to it. Tell us a little bit about Superior. What's your population? Because I think that's an important context to have. You aren't necessarily a 10,000 population. Tell us about Superior.
Well, the new census hasn't come out, but our sign says 1957.
Yeah.
Just
under 2,000.
Right? So
yeah.
Just under 2,000. Okay.
We're a mile inside the Kansas-Nebraska border. We're kind of in south central Nebraska.
We're at the junction of two highways, 8 and 14.
We're unique in the sense that we have a lot of things not typical for a town of our size. We have an amazing hospital, a critical access hospital that's went through its third multi-million-dollar renovation.
It's an award-winning hospital at that.
We built a new school, an elementary school, so we now have one big campus. We have a golf course, a skating rink, a bowling alley, and so we have a lot of things that's unique to our community. But I think the leadership is also unique because yes, we used a lot of those CDBG grants, but we've done TIF a couple times successfully. We use the Red Lake program through USDA several times successfully. We just upped our sales and use tax. We raised it 1/2 cent to go after some more funds to do recreational amenities. A portion of that sales and use tax is LB 840. We use that LB 840 funds to support our local businesses and expansion and retention. So we have a lot of tools that, based on leadership, and Chris has hit on it, yes, they were unified, but trust me, not all of their decisions were 100% agreed. We just did our downtown revitalization, and he'll tell you right now, he wasn't 100% in agreement with how it turned out. But there's a lot of tools in that bag that we try to use, and we try to get creative. When we did this presentation for the state, when we got our boom dollars, our hashtag was bend the rule, and rule like rural Nebraska. And it's truly, we have to be able to be flexible here. Yes, you have goals, you have plans. These are the things we want. But if something comes in front of you that you've got to do everything you can to try to get that. And that's kind of what has been our approach and how we've done things.
Yeah, we have a plan for our town in mind, but if something jumps up tomorrow that we know we can benefit from, that isn't necessarily on our plan for tomorrow, we're going to try and take advantage of it anyway, because be flexible.
Great. Help me here for a moment, Derek. You mentioned the sales tax.
Yes,
Would
ma'am.
that have been possible without your needs assessment survey process, or?
Well, I will tell you, we've had a sales and use tax since '94. It was a 1 cent, and they re-upped it in '05, and it was for a 15-year, and they used it for LB 840. The community needs assessment survey and those other studies, that recreational amenity side of it continues to come to the forefront. And it's, why can't we have a aquatic center or a splash pad, or why we need sidewalks and so on and so forth. And based on those community comments, we then went out and said, all right, if you raise the sales tax to 1.5, another 1/2 cent, that becomes the community's money to do these kind of fun projects, these things that you want to see. Put it on the ballot. The community responded, raised it 1/2 cent. The day after we got the results, I walked into our treasurer's office and I requested $1 million, whatever it was, $600 and some thousand. We applied for our pedestrian transportation project that we did a study for. So here in the next probably 3 months, we're going to be building about $600,000 worth of sidewalks that will connect our major trip generators, our school to our downtown, our parks to each other. And then we're kicking off a Parks and Rec master plan to once again, all right, now that you've increased your sales tax, you have these funds available, where do you want to see it go? And we'll go through that planning process, see what the community wants, and then we'll systematically try to pick off those top priorities and provide the amenities that the community wants to see.
Okay, great. So just some comments that have been shared in the chat box. Krista said the homes that you're building are adorable. And I'm excited to see the finished product there. So Sharon did weigh in the chat box, and I'll share that with you as well. But she was just very complimentary that the council stood strong and stood together during the first and initial year of nuisance abatement. So the staff was very supportive, and we've appreciated working with the city through a variety of items, including your needs assessment surveys. So, thank you, Derek. Pardon me?
We couldn't have done it without you guys. So
Okay.
Thank you for the help.
Sure. So we're going to open it up and ask all of you to open your microphones. We'd like to know what maybe was an aha moment for you today from today's presentation. We're sharing Chris and Derek's information on the screen for you. So if you need to reach out to them for additional information, you can easily do that through the city office, and Chris can be reached through the city clerk's email that's listed there on the screen. But I'd kind of like to know from our attendees today, what's an aha or an action item that you've picked up on in listening to Derek and Chris this afternoon?
I think, and I'm going to be careful how I ask this or what I say, because I don't want to get myself in trouble until I do some more digging. But I was the one that asked about, okay, as a former elected official for a small community who's now participating in a regional rural workforce housing project that we were just awarded. The city as the developer made sense to me. And then I'm sitting here thinking, because there's limitations on where funds can go back and forth and how our match was funded through a lot of communities through their own LB 840 for housing, and a stipulation it's got to go to a qualified business. So I'm thinking through that a little bit, but I think I just want to put you on notice. I'm going to reach out probably both to you and to SCED to see about how that relationship can be mapped out to be able to still use the funds to the qualified business and take advantage of the fact when there's a small amount, how it can have a bigger impact based on the size of the community. So again, I'm going to be careful with what I'm asking because I've got some thoughts in my head, but I'm glad you mentioned that because it tripped a trigger for me a little bit that I think is going to add an option onto how we can make that available and get it in the contractor's hands.
So the way we match our grants, yes, we use the sales and use tax, but we don't use the portion that has been put into the LB 840. So when we put it on the ballot, actually back in 05, they did a minimum of 75,000 to LB 840, and then the bulk or the remainder into a fund that would pay for capital projects, capital improvements, and grant match. So we're able, all of these grants come out of that matching from the sales and use tax, and then we're able to move forward. But that's how we do it.
The piece, I'm sorry, the piece that went ding, ding, ding for me was tax exempt purchasing power.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely.
Okay. Super. I look forward to seeing that connection take place, Michelle, with the city and such. So, and as Jason reminds us that every LB 840 is community specific. So you guys structured yours according to what your priorities were, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Spent a lot of hours.
I'm sorry, Chris.
That we spent a lot of hours on that.
Okay, good. So does anybody have another aha that they want to share? Well, as you're thinking about that question, feel free to enter them into the chat box, but I want to continue and move forward. So Sherry, if you'll change to the next slide, I just want to wrap up and remind everybody that not only is today's webinar going to be available on our website, but our past webinars are also available. There are just some of our awesome speakers that we've had in the past. So feel free to check that out on our website listed there below. So you'll want to take advantage of that. And Tyler left early, but he said he would definitely be checking this out at a later time. So, and then next month coming up is our spring gathering, June 3rd in Hastings. We are going to be visiting the topic of upper story living in downtown Hastings. The early bird registration expires this Saturday. So if you're thinking about coming but just haven't registered yet, feel free to do that before Saturday to take advantage of that special discount. That price does go up to $139 after Saturday. So we reach out to myself if you're interested in registering for that after today. And there is also some scholarships available from the Nebraska Development Network for that occasion. So if you've got a community member who's interested but just not sure that they want to pay that money, here's a perfect example and a way to bring them to that. So let me know also if you're interested in that information. So
Lori, I might add that the slides today will have the link to register. So, and I will try to get those out yet this afternoon, so
Okay.
you can register if you need to.
Perfect, thank you. So I appreciate that. So, and then wrapping up, our next webinar is June 17th at 2 p.m. and we are excited to have Congressman Adrian Smith joining us. He represents the Nebraska 3rd District in the U.S. House of Representatives. And we're just calling this a rural housing conversation with the congressman. So we're excited to have him. Housing is a priority to him as he serves the 3rd District, which is a majority of Nebraska. But he will be joining us at 2 o'clock Central Time on June 17th. So once again, I just want to say thank you to Derek and Chris for their participation and for sharing the story that is happening in Superior. So do either one of you have any last thoughts for us?
Nope, pretty much said it all already, Lori.
Okay, thank you
We have
so
our-
much.
You have
So
contact if you want to reach out. I mean, we're willing to talk
Yep.
or answer any questions.
Don't be shy.
yeah, that's the great thing about the HomeNE Network and our rural Nebraska communities in general, just the ability and the willingness to share with one another. So we've once again popped your information up on the screen and it will be available in the slides. So with that, are there any last comments or questions? Well, if not, I thank all of you for joining us today. Josh is saying that we can watch or rewatch this presentation also on SCED's YouTube channel. So I forget about that being available, but you can also check it out there. So Derek and Chris, thank you so much once again. And I appreciate all that you've done in making today happen. So
Our pleasure.